The 28th annual 10 Over Carnival took on special significance this year. The club's centenary celebrations attracting the likes of former Test leg spinner Robert Holland and state coach Steve Rickson. For Doug Walters, it was a chance to revisit the grounds where his career began, but the boy from Dungog needed a spell after another heroic innings of 48 from 3 overs, getting his side out of trouble. His former colleague Jeff Thompson may not be off the same lengthy approach, but that unmistakable action that still haunts many a batsman was still evident. The highest score for the day going into the semi-finals was 154 by Thornton, one of the favourites for the competition. Meantime, in baseball, the Hunter Valley Eagles have finished with a 1-3 record against the Melbourne Monarchs. The Eagles' only win came in the opening match of last night's doubleheader with a 3-2 victory. Melbourne recovered to win the last encounter 5-4. The Eagles travel to Perth next weekend with pitcher Shane Penfolds and Chris Bradley both in doubt after sustaining injuries over the weekend. America's Jack Nicklaus, winning the US Masters 8 years ago at the ripe old age of 46. Arguably the game's best ever product, the Golden Bear is now on the Seniors Tour, but Australia's Jack Nicklaus is very much on the Juniors circuit. At 3 years of age, Newcastle's Jack Nicklaus is hardly big enough to tow a golf buggy, let alone reach into his bag for his 60-centimetre cut-down driver. But he does have the Golden Bear's locks and a swing to match. The only difference, the spelling of the surname and the left-handed grip.
Well, he started coming with golf when he was about 3 months old. He used to take me in the baby capsule, and ever since he could walk or swing a club, he'd come out and he'd have a hit in that with us off the tees, and I've been able to stop him since.
The name is totally coincidental, but Jack has already been barred from the backyard and is a regular on the fairways at Steelworks Golf Club, embarrassing members by regularly hitting the ball around 100 metres, and he's not afraid to tell them.
I smashed the gap down.
And just in case you missed that, he meant...
I hit big shot.
With Father Peter banished to retrieving young Jack's booming drives, who knows, this golden cub could one day graduate into another Golden Bear.
People in the Maitland suburb of Lorne are fighting mad. They say their properties may have just been devalued by about 20%.
People simply are not comfortable buying a house with a certificate that says this property is flood liable.
A consultant's report will go before Maitland Council to revise the flood standard for the city. Under the proposal, an extra 300 homes will be marked as flood prone, changed from a 1 in 100 year flood to 1 in 200 years. Homes in Maitland City, East Maitland and Lorne are affected, with more than half of Lorne possibly being included. The new level is measured to the heights of the dramatic 1955 flood, when streets became rivers, causing frightening damage. Council says it has the responsibility to advise the public of any possible problems.
If you're purchasing a home, we have an obligation to tell you whether that property was likely to be affected by flooding, and that's Council's role.
Special levies have been put in since the 55 flood, but Council says the areas being looked at would still be affected if a similar flood hit today. People here in Lorne are holding a public meeting tonight to fight the move. The proposal goes before Council early in December. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
Having won the country championship last season, Newcastle earned the right to challenge Sydney grade premiers Randwick in the state final. Selectors have chosen a similar side to the team that contested the experimental one-day match against Tasmania, with a few exceptions.
I think with Peter March and Paul Dyson particularly coming back into the Newcastle side, it's certainly stronger than the side which won the country championship last year, and I think they'll do very well against Randwick, particularly with Randwick's 3 Shield players out.
The side will be captained by Mark Curry, with selectors going for pace, opting against choosing a young, inexperienced spinner on an SCG wicket which is likely to take some turn. Regular spinner David Rickson has a broken arm, while former Queensland Shield player Steve Story made himself unavailable for selection. But Sunday can't come quick enough for Charlestown quick Peter Marsh, who after spending the last 2 seasons with Randwick has plenty to play for against his former club.
Last season was a little bit disappointing for me. I spent some time in the 2nd grade, worked my way back into 1st grade, so maybe there's a few points to prove.
Thirteen of those injured in the collapse of the Newcastle Workers' Club during the 1989 earthquake sued Newcastle City Council, the Workers' Club and several others for compensation. The 13 victims were due to commence legal proceedings in Newcastle Supreme Court today, but at the last moment the parties agreed to settle out of court. Legal aid solicitor Robin Smith is representing all of those who were injured. As part of the settlement, they're not allowed to disclose how much compensation they were paid or who was required to pay it.
I'm unable to say what the terms are. Those terms are not to be disclosed.
However, NBN has been able to confirm that the Workers' Club was not required to pay the victims any compensation. It's been a long legal battle, taking almost 5 years to get a result.
It has taken a very long time, and it is a matter that perhaps should have settled some time ago.
On Friday, the compensation matter will be finalised in court. Further legal action between the Workers' Club, Newcastle Council and other parties will continue next year. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
Hosted by the Gosford Tennis Association, more than 200 players in 3 age groups contested the finals held over the last 3 days. The semi-finals and finals were staged today, with Peter McInerney of Gosford upsetting state representative Peter Clark in 3 sets in the 16 boys. McInerney lost the first set 6-2, but recovered to win the next 2 sets 6-2, 6-2. In the 16 girls, Alison Davidian from Sydney proved too strong for Newcastle's Belinda Nordsvan, taking the match 6-2, 6-love. Gosford's Tim Graham made it a local double, winning the 14 boys with a 6-3, 6-4 win over Sydney's Ben Mathias. The North Coast Paul Telford won the 12-year boys, Natalie Coe the girls. All will now begin preparing for the National Age Championships in January next year.
It's been a long road for Mary Ironman, battling to gain compensation for the leg injuries she suffered while trapped when the Workers' Club collapsed during the 1989 earthquake.
Most terrifying, because none of us knew what was going on. There was the club shaking like mad, and we didn't know what was happening.
13 victims were to have started legal proceedings in Newcastle Supreme Court yesterday against Newcastle City Council and the Workers' Club. In a last-minute decision, they settled out of court. The terms of the agreement are secret, but the Workers' Club was not required to pay any money. Mary Ironman is relieved she didn't have to go to court.
We can just carry on the best we can.
Norm Duffy's wife was killed in the Workers' Club collapse. He was trapped by the legs in the rubble.
I don't, forget them memories. Anyone, because I was buried in there for 5 hours in the dark, pitch black. I always say that, I've not seen darkness like it.
Norm is glad the case has been settled, but says the money won't bring back his wife.
What they said they could get, and that I thought was very, good enough. I never get what I want, that's my wife.
Jane Anderson, NBN News.
There is something in the air on the first Tuesday in November, something that makes people do funny things with their money.
I'm willing to put heaps of money on and lose it. Doesn't worry me, it's just one day a year.
But I reckon I'm going to win. I've got the trifecta marked down. Don't know what the numbers mean, but...
A time when about 500,000 once-a-year mug punters, and that's just in this state, muscle in on a great Australian tradition. Can I have a box mystery trifecta, please? How much is that?
$3.
For complete idiots? The TAB takes bets worth around $50 million. The region's clubs, pubs and restaurants also cleaned up today, with the Glamour set taking a leisurely lunch hour to soak up the cup fever. It's a day of high fashion, fun and frivolity, not everyone with their minds on the track. What do you want to do with him? And when you can't get into a party, make one yourself. This group took to the streets in the Junction for their own private celebration, champagne and the works. But by the time 3:20 came along, the party and the nation stopped.
The Port of Newcastle and BHP Steelworks have both undergone dramatic restructuring over the last 10 years, with labour forces cut and practices streamlined. This week, 9 government delegates from Turkey are in the city to see how that's been achieved and how programs like the government-funded DEET can assist. Boss of the Hunter Ports Authority, Jeff Connell, met the group. They were also taken around the harbour and told of the changes which have occurred to make the port more profitable and internationally competitive. The delegation's tour of the port and visit to Newcastle is part of a $2.3 million contract won by DEET. Already 2 representatives are in Turkey, helping the government to establish programs which will assist when local industries are restructured.
We provide assistance for people who have been retrenched or are about to be retrenched, and in terms of providing training, education needs, and through the Commonwealth Employment Service.
The group will visit the Valley tomorrow, studying our tourism, textile and footwear industries.
Muswellbrook is more than 1,000 kilometres from Melbourne and a world away from the pomp and ceremony that characterises the annual Cup. But thousands of people still crowd into the course to share part of the atmosphere that is Melbourne Cup Day. Or do they? The locals have let us in on a little secret. They reckon the Melbourne Cup is the most overrated event of the year, and they think it's about time their race topped the nation. The locals think the Melbourne Cup has lost its way, the international event now out of the reach of the average Aussie battler. But they say the Muswellbrook Cup can fill the void.
Why not? The Melbourneites, they're out, we're in. New South Wales.
Why not? Everything's possible, isn't it? And of course the trees, the food, the atmosphere, the friendliness, the country, the thoroughbreds.
If all goes well, past winners of the Muswellbrook Cup could join the likes of Farlap and Jearn in the history books, including today's winner. Pardue Bay won the Cup, Dr Farnsworth second, Rare Excellence third. But it's not just the Cup Muswellbrook boasts. Thankfully, it also matches the weather of Melbourne on its biggest race day of the year. And if that doesn't convince you, at least it's a lot easier backing a winner in the Muswellbrook Cup than it is in its Melbourne counterpart. Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
A joy flight came to a terrifying end for a Sydney pilot and his passenger today. Their homemade kit plane crashed soon after taking off from a private airstrip at Somersby on the Central Coast.
The undercarriage actually clipped the trees, and with that the plane just somersaulted and dropped straight into the position that it's in now.
The 60-year-old passenger scrambled from the wreckage while emergency crews freed the trapped 52-year-old pilot. The 2 men are now in a satisfactory condition in Gosford Hospital. Police say the situation could have been much worse.
And they could have either gone into the water or cut a fair sort of a swathe through the trees, and had they have done that, there wouldn't be much left of the plane.
The Civil Aviation Authority is investigating. It's believed a sudden gust of wind rather than mechanical failure caused the crash. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
This is the family portrait which was taken of the Pitt family on Saturday, October 22nd, the day Janelle and Robert disappeared. Later that day, 5-year-old Elise was picked up by friends for an overnight stay. 2 days after, little Lucas was found alone in the house in a severely dehydrated state. What happened to the couple has police baffled. They do know, however, that 32-year-old Janelle was forced from the house.
Well, I'm not prepared to disclose what that evidence is, but certainly our evaluation of the scene suggests that to us.
Police say they have also received information which suggests Robert Pitt may have left the Avoca home sometime that Saturday evening. They've released a photo of a car similar to the one the Pitts were driving. Their car was found the next day burnt out of Buckety, 50 kilometres from the house. The car's number plate was PIT 105.
There's quite a number of possible routes that the car could take between those two locations.
One lead police are following has come from 2 anonymous calls to a local radio station. The caller claimed the Pitts' bodies were in Mangrove Dam, which is not too far from where their car was found burnt out almost 2 weeks ago. The dam will be searched by air or boat. Until the Pitts' bodies are found, though, police are keeping an open mind as to how they died and why. Jodie McKay, NBN News. They gathered early for last night's meeting, objectors led by Colin Maybury and supporters urged on by developer Garbus Simonian.
What do we want? Jobs! You won't bloody wait if you get bloody jobs! We want jobs!
Previous meetings have been almost hijacked by the vocal protest group. Last night, Mayor Marie Callaghan took a stand.
Would be a benefit to the Curry and Western area.
Everyone have the right to speak. You're allowed these two. You do not allow Councillor Maybury. The meeting is adjourned.
With the meeting resumed, the real issue was addressed, whether or not to rescind an earlier motion supporting in principle the idea of a dross plant for curry. Councillors in turn spoke of why they were taking the stand they were. Councillor Jeff Maybury criticising the tactics of the action group led by his brother Colin.
There has been so much mistruths, outright lies, and low-down mongrel tactics.
However, there were those councillors who supported the protesters, the final vote in their favour. But instead of conveying its objection to the proposal, Council voted to have no stance on the issue. It will now be up to the Department of Planning to decide if the plant goes ahead. Meanwhile, the region's 2 aluminium smelters will be asked to answer 21 dross-related questions.
You stay there, pal, please. You stay there. Now, I know.
A petrol tank has exploded in a mechanic's workshop. The first aid team must now identify the worst injuries and treat them quickly. But they must also be aware of any danger to their lives. It's just one of the scenarios faced by the 8 teams representing Pacific power stations. The teams are awarded for quick and successful care and lose points for anything that harms the patient. Araring proved to be the safest team for the 5th year in a row, but the competition helps the entire company.
We've reduced our accident frequency rate by some 80% over the last 5 years.
Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
After a year off from rugby league, Paul Martin will make his return as captain-coach of Western Suburbs in the 1995 Newcastle competition. Out getting acquainted with his new home ground, Martin is a former Australian schoolboy and played Winfield Cup, first with Canberra, then the Gold Coast in 92-93. The 27-year-old chose West ahead of several Winfield Cup playing offers.
I was more interested in the coaching at this stage of my career, and West sort of approached me with a very professional attitude.
West won't be the only side with new faces next season. While many clubs are still negotiating contracts, there's early signs of a player migration toward the coalfields. Toronto forwards Paul Izzard and Anthony Brady are making the move to Cessnock. Also joining the Goannas is Canberra reserve grade player Troy Peterson. Cessnock has also retained the services of Newcastle, New South Wales and Australian residence rep player Trevor Crowe.
Basically it was financial. That was the reasoning behind the 94 move, and they're basically the same reasons for 95.
Joining Crowe is former Winfield Cup player David Woodbury, who'll take the reins as non-playing coach. Newcastle's representative hooker Jamie Forbes is expected to re-sign tonight. Meanwhile, Curry has signed both Toronto's Gavin Cook and Craig Mealer from Waratah for 12 months. Moving to central Charlestown is Toronto's Brett Pennell. Toronto gains former Australian schoolboy Jason Ford, plus his Bawarrina clubmate Gordon Bennett. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
The official ceremony was largely drowned out, the Macedonian community posting a speaker of its own when Senator Nick Bolkus stepped forward to address a crowd dotted with the red and yellow Macedonian flag. He was greeted with a howl of protest. The Macedonians, angry at the federal government's decision in February to recognise them as Slav Macedonians.
We're sorry it had to happen this way, but it's the only way. No one's listening. Just nobody is listening. We're not Slavs, we are Macedonians. Simply Macedonian.
Children singing the Australian anthem also struggled to be heard above the wind and disruption. Amid the ruckus, the minister unveiled a plaque, a recognition of the contribution of thousands of migrants whose first Australian home was Greta's Silver City. Organisers pushed on with the festivities. For many other new Australians, the demonstration marred what should have been a day of rekindled friendships and memories.
It's important to a lot of people who came here to celebrate, and it's been ruined for them.
The government won't bow down to this sort of behaviour.
SES, police and Shortland electricity workers were securing loose sheets of tin, some of which were wrapped around power lines when the wind sheared the entire roof of the High Street house.
We were lucky in that sense that they got down and out of the road before the roof went.
A mother and her 4 children, all under 5, were not at home at the time. Damage to power lines left Largs and Bulwarra Heights without electricity. Apart from this house, the damage has so far been confined to trees blocking roads. However, the worst could be yet to come, with winds of up to 100 kilometres an hour expected to continue throughout the day. At Morpeth, power lines were brought down across the bridge. Before Shortland Electricity could secure the severed lines, a fire broke out. The bridge will be closed until it can be inspected. Meanwhile, several bush and grass fires fanned by the wind also kept emergency services busy.
Take 7 women and 1 man who share a burning desire to learn how to tap dance, and you have the makings of the musical comedy Stepping Out.
Some come because it gives them something to do for themselves. It's therapy. You know, they all have their different reasons, and some of them you don't find out until right at the end.
The group spends endless hours practising after being asked to perform in a charity concert. Like the plot, rehearsals for the cast members have had their ups and downs.
There have been blisters and a couple of slips and all the rest of it, but they don't get any sympathy. Well, that's too bad. Put on a Band-Aid and get back up there. It'll be all right.
So does the troupe make it to the big night? Here's a sample of what could be in store when the show opens at Newcastle Repertory Club on Wednesday night.
Party politics was nearly forgotten for the launch of the Hunter's aggressive marketing ploy. It would have taken months to get all these politicians to the Hunter, so business leaders have done the next best thing.
The Hunter has come to Parliament House.
It highlights the region's competitive edge, the Hunter advantage, from reforms in industrial relations to its booming wine industry and its increasing tourism trade.
We have developed a can-do reputation for getting the job done on time and on budget.
Prime Minister Keating says federal government initiatives like the tax office building and honeysuckle project in Newcastle have given the region a renewed vigour.
We are seeing in the Hunter the really confident development of a community and sense of community and an individualism and confidence that perhaps mightn't have existed.
Richard O'Leary, NBN News.